Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the METSTRADE Connect Tech Talk, the latest of a series. We're looking at the superyacht sector. My name is Martin Redmayne, and we're talking today about the green engine room. Rather than talk about the whole engine room, which is obviously a very big topic, we're focusing on auxiliary power and the genset world. So I'm joined today by a very esteemed panel, Ivo Veldhuis from Mayfair Marine, Jan Willem Vissers from Volvo Penta, and the two gentlemen from MTU Rolls-Royce, Tobias Cole and Dr. Peter Rigger. Good day to you, gentlemen. How are you?
We're good.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I'm fine.
So listen, Ivo, very quick question. Let's talk about auxiliary power. Low load, sort of stable loading, and also the issue of shore connections and stuff. What is your current perspective on what we do well and what we don't do well in the world of gensets?
Various things we do well. Obviously, the superyacht industry does quite well with making sure that electricity is always provided on board superyachts, and that's something that we have done quite well. But as a side consequence, obviously, generators tend to be provide overcapacity, are generally too big, not running on their ideal loading and so forth. So they create additional amount of smoke and so forth. And so generally not the most efficient, but secure, but generally not the most efficient way. So that is one of the aspects. The other aspect is obviously that particularly on the larger yachts, say a 100-meter or a 90-meter yacht, generally the shoreside capacity for shore power is essentially very limited. So generally the big yachts tend to run on generators pretty much most of their life, certainly involved in the project that I'm currently doing. And hence we are emitting emissions very close to the shore, or if not in the marina all the time.
Yes. And
you see that marinas are going to have an issue with this, and coastal communities are going to have an issue with this. So this is one of the things that, that drives our industry, and we need to find solutions for that.
So from your experience, let's say, what are the solutions you want to see come into the market?
Well, obviously, one of the things that we are very keen on is obviously some sort of zero emission, and if not battery solution for when the yacht or in the marina, and this can be achieved in many different ways. Obviously, as you know, I am very much a big fan of hydrogen and fuel cells, but that is one of the many solutions that can be done. I think it requires a partnership approach involving the marinas, involving fuel suppliers, involving shoreside electricity providers, and combining all of that together, we can provide an ideal solution to make sure that the yachts are quiet and do not emit emissions. One of these ideal solutions is the introduction of power barges, where we use the storage of hydrogen gas together with containerized versions of fuel cells, and we're using those as a way to increase the shoreside power loading of the vessels.
Cool.
So that these big yachts can actually get the power they need and can turn off their generators.
Yeah, I think it's going to become a bigger problem than we realize in the long term as more and more boats come on stream and marinas aren't ready for it. So Jan Willem, tell me about Volvo Penta's approach to this topic or this problem, because it's something the generator manufacturers find frustrating, these low loads and these high emissions. What's the solution?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not only for us, but also for the customer. It should be an issue, because you create more maintenance costs. You have other stuff which can be avoided, and especially now entering the area of IMO 3, which will come in place the 1st of January. Let's say low loads is a no-go area, because then we might have an installation which doesn't work properly. It could be clogged. I think the chief engineer on board doesn't like that. He would like to have a steady power solution. So as said by Ivo, it's all about, let's say, making a correct selection of engines so we have a proper load. And this could be achieved by, let's say, as we call the power of plenty. So we have a multiple installation, not too big engines. On the other hand, you can also do that by going variable speed, for instance. So if you have a low load, you just reduce the RPM of the genset. You could do that by DC generation or an AC generator on several RPMs. So by that, you keep the load on the engine relatively high and also the exhaust temperature, and you will have no issue on the after treatment, and you have a better fuel efficiency. Because when you compare, for instance, I did some comparison on our engines on variable speed and fixed speed, and then you see that on variable speed you can gain minimum 10% on fuel efficiency when you are below 50% load of the generator. So all in all, yes, making a good balance, electric balance of the vessel, and act like that, and just not put too big engines in or make them variable speed. So at least you have an optimum installation on board with less maintenance, less risk on clogging systems. Yeah, and we as a supplier, we have a solution for that. But yeah, many others have that as well. So does this answer your question slightly?
Yeah. I think what's interesting, I'm going to come to Peter and Tobias. Peter, listen, put it into context now. We're building yachts today that'll be built and delivered next year, the year after, and probably 2025 in some cases. What are we doing now that is sort of solving this problem? Are we moving fast enough, or could we move faster in this technology approach?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for Ivo and Jan Willem. They brought a little bit the playground where we're playing. So a lot of the topics already have been mentioned. Already as of today, with our MTU hybrid solutions from Rolls-Royce Power Systems, we are able to provide our customer with systems where, for example, you can use the battery also in the harbor to substitute the genset or to help the genset or to help the shore connection. So if you want to get rid of running gensets at low load, you can use a battery, perhaps in combination with a weak shore connection in order to lower the peaks. So that's what we are doing today. Are we fast enough? Good question. Perhaps not. But next topic to come, we heard a little bit about fuel cells. Also me, I'm a big fan of fuel cells. So I'm personally convinced that with all the infrastructure growing with traffic on highway to the harbors, so there will be infrastructure for hydrogen, and this in a mid and long-term future will be exactly the right thing to get rid of emissions in the harbors by gensets.
Yeah, on that topic, what do you think the barriers are, apart from the obvious, let's say, infrastructure issues? Is the market ready for fuel cell?
If I may, is that to a certain extent, the technology is certainly ready. If you look at some of the well-known fuel cell manufacturers like PowerCell and Ballard and those kind of companies, then and Plug Power, for instance, those are certainly ready to enter the marine market, and yet they have marine-ready solutions. One of the things that is unfortunately not ready are the regulations and the regulatory infrastructure. So companies like Lloyd's and to a lesser extent DNV are not really, how shall I put it, comfortable with the topic to sign it off, because there are no official rules and regulations for hydrogen, and there are more what we call guidelines for fuel cell installation. So that is one aspect of it, and obviously there's always the case of, okay, I need to supply the hydrogen to the yacht, and obviously hydrogen is not produced, particularly in Europe, is not produced in many locations. Most of those locations are either in Rotterdam or Germany or the north of France, so industrial areas. So getting the hydrogen to in large quantities, that is, to the areas where the yachts are, is generally you will end up with using a road tanker to drive it to the marina, essentially. And then obviously, then comes the whole process of transferring the hydrogen into the yacht. And even that is a pretty complicated process with various safety issues that need to be considered. So is it straightforward? No, not entirely. Is it doable? Yes, it is. But I see the regulations and upgrading the training of the crew mainly as the key elements, really.
But would you say there's a timeline of, let's say, 10 years or less until this becomes part of our ecosystem?
If I look at the commercial marine world, where Mayfair Marine does a lot of work, we see the speed is very quick. And there's a lot of, but mainly liquid hydrogen projects coming on stream, ferries, ammonia, for instance, is another alternative hydrogen carrier that's obviously receiving a lot of attention. Yeah. Those projects are moving very fast. So you'll see that happening in the next 5 to 8, 10 years. So the 10-year time span. Yachting is different. There's a lot of talk about hydrogen. I would love to do a hydrogen yacht. And I know there are some ideas and active projects even, but they are also hitting that regulation barrier, essentially. Even with the classification societies and also the flag states, who are like, well, this is all new technology, we are changing the world. And then we're talking about the designers who are not used to incorporating these big volumes. There are design issues. So it is it's a complicated topic that requires this partnership approach. Everybody needs to come together and understand that hydrogen and alternative fuels are different. But I'm diverging a bit too much from the topic, sorry.
Yeah, so Peter, please.
Yeah, Ivo, I tend to agree. So all the points you're mentioning are the right ones, but I think also, and that's the way where we are going to with our MTU solutions, is this market, we have to shape it. And I'm completely convinced that also for the yacht market, especially for the power generation, onboard power generation, we will see solutions much earlier than within a decade's time. So if you look on the money that within the European Union will be spent on this hydrogen topic within the next decade, so we're talking about 450 billion euros.
Yes, correct.
It would be completely fool to ignore that for the super yachts. This will happen, and we have the opportunity now to shape it.
I think maybe just for the other engine companies in the call, I would like to mention that obviously there are various engines, internal combustion engines that can be converted to hydrogen and alternative fuels, and there's a lot of those around. So certainly the whole hydrogen topic is not just about fuel cells. It is also involves internal combustion engines. Worth mentioning.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you, Ivo, because we did already a conversion. And okay. If I may something else about this topic, which hopefully is useful, what we notice in the yachting is that comfort is an issue. With fuel cells, you need a battery pack. And if you want to run, let's say, without any gensets, you need also a big battery pack. So what I expect... Hello?
Yep.
My screen is dark. All of a sudden, what happened?
You're still there.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm still here. Yes, and you can hear me still. Okay, yeah. Sorry. So what will happen, in my opinion, what I think will be the future is that we should build up power plants on board vessels built on small stones, small packages, which can be easily changed up to a fuel cell or whatever will be there in the future. I think I fully agree with Ivo that hydrogen is one of the future fuels, but there are still some, let's say, some hurdles to take in storage and the amount of hydrogen to take on board. Regulation is not ready yet, but if we build up a power plant on board based on, let's say, 3, 4, 5 gensets today, IMO 3 may be based or should be based IMO 3. And then they can easily be changed in the near future by more cleaner CO2 neutral solutions, because it's just a matter how you produce the power, and there are several solutions. We also have, as Ivo said, we are experimenting now with combustion engines with dual fuel, which is also showing a good result, but it's too early to release this to the market. And this is not a Volvo solution. I would like to clearly say it's a solution jointly developed with a commercial operator. Yeah, my advice to the market would be build it up in small blocks and prepare for the future. But the future is not there yet, but it will come within 10 years. That's for sure.
I think you mentioned two very important points, I would say. I think one is I have to pick up the thing with intelligence. So how to make a good sizing of the generators. And I very much like also the idea to think about this brick or the component exchange idea, because we have on the one side new builds.
Hello?
Can you hear me quite well?
I can hear you.
Yes,
perfectly.
we can.
Yeah. So I will continue. So we have the new builds on the one side, which is a good thing because there we have more flexibility, but we have many existing yachts. And there we need to find ways to really identify the real load profile of the generators. One thing was mentioned before, to replace, we have the most time 2 or 3 Jennies on board, to replace one with a battery pack and run the engines more efficient. That's the one thing. The other thing is if we have the knowledge how the boats have been operated, we have the possibility to make the correct dimensioning for any energy source. It doesn't matter if it's the battery pack in the end or if it's a fuel cell, or also reformer technology. I also want to touch that one. So alternative fuels here, or these kind of technologies. Infrastructure is a very important thing. I very much agree also to what Peter said. We need to drive that, so nobody will wait for us. So we have the possibility to push this forward and create somehow the demand in this direction, and also help the marinas with let's say knowledge and also ideas how to make that infrastructure possible.
Yeah, I think that's a key factor actually, Tobias, is that when you look at the marketplace and the amount of yachts that are sitting in marinas and using that infrastructure on a day-to-day basis, we've been fairly slow to adapt and change our position in the market to put the right amount of power for the fleet growth. So is there a better solution in terms of that shore-based infrastructure?
So if I might give an opinion here, we have in our MTU solution portfolio a lot of stationary power generation, and we have a very close look on everything we call power to X, alternative fuels, on-site power generation and transformation. That's why I'm so convinced that infrastructure will happen, because we take part and we drive this, but especially for stabilizing shore power, for example, with fuel cells, with stationary battery container battery packs, we solve a part of the problems which are there today. So the weak connection onshore is today a problem in some harbors. Infrastructure of hydrogen with surplus of energy from local generated sun or wind power. So what we will see within the next decade will have all or a lot of those elements, not every element in every harbor, but we will see a combination. And that makes a little bit the complexity. And as Ivo rightly mentioned, all the regulatory stuff hangs a little bit behind. And that's so we need to tackle the challenge on different playgrounds, regulatory one, technology one, economical one, obviously. And I think that's where those European programs help also the industry to team up. But it will happen, and we have it in our hands to shape it.
Yeah, I think I would like. Oh, pardon. I was going to mention that the key word here is the word partnership, and I think because we are all the people in our call represent only a certain set of components within the overall energy system, and so the reason why I mentioned partnership is because you need to come up with both users and creators of shore power to come up with a solution. So in this discussion, you should also drag in the, perhaps with kicking feet, but you have to drag in the marinas.
Yes.
And they are really key to this solution, and they also need to be part of this discussion in the future.
Well, I think even on that point, you're almost going to see that the marinas will have regulations imposed upon them in the future to reduce pollution.
I think so, yes.
It's coming already. It's coming already. And I feel that's where the partnerships have to start now with all stakeholders and say, listen, we shouldn't be sitting in port running 10% of the generator load just to keep air conditioning running or to keep lights on a boat. It just doesn't make any sense. No. There's almost three elements here. One is the infrastructure on land to adapt and improve and invest in partnership with the industry. There's also the design, engineering, and yacht builders to stop even building yachts with so much almost unnecessary load requirements. Can we re-engineer to have less requirement in a port situation? It sometimes doesn't make any sense to me that 300 days a year, there's no guests on board, yet the system's running all the time. So is there a better way of running the asset with a better infrastructure on land, but also a better system on board to actually stop this thought process of continuous running for the sake of the crew? No offense to crew, sorry.
I think the one of the things that I wanted to add, Martin, is that coming to the yacht builders for a minute, is that to a certain extent, our industry is very innovative on one side. We look at AV and all the consumer experience on board the yacht. And on the other side, our industry is enormously backward, where, I don't represent the builder, so I can be a bit open about this topic, is that when it comes to the propulsion of the vessel itself, we are still sticking to the old and trusted method. And yes, I can understand why shipyards do that. They are obviously tied to very risky projects and risky contracts and so forth, and their financial penalties are high. So again, in the spirit of partnership, is that we should try to remove some of those barriers in our industry to allow innovation also on the yacht, from the yacht building side,
yes,
to happen, to move away from the typical combustion engine drivetrain setup, and that applies. Obviously, most of the bigger yachts are all diesel electric now, and they are future proof. But when I look at the typical 50, 35 meter, maybe even 65 meter yachts, they still tend to be using the conventional setup. And I think it is those yachts, and also what Tobias mentioned, the refit. Wow, there's a lot of opportunity around to really improve the market, but it is also about us as a yachting industry to say, look, it is possible, and we have all these solutions available. Please listen to us to introduce hybrid drivetrains, to combine fuel cells with batteries, to do all these wonderful things that we can do to improve the efficiency of the yachting, of the yacht itself.
Yeah,
and that's what can be done now.
To me, Ivo, exactly that. There is an opportunity for the industry. I suppose the word is clean up its act by re-engineering and rethinking the way in which yachts are operated, but not just at a new build phase, in the upgrade or rebuild phase. Because as you're saying, Tobias, there's 4,000 yachts out there that have got very conventional, old school technology that could be very easily adapted for the future. And to me, that's almost a responsibility of the market to sort of put forward to the owner an opportunity. Because I think that's another factor. We need to make sure the fleet starts to reinvent itself for a next generation thought process.
Absolutely. I think what we can do as the industry is really deliver confidence also to the shipyards, because Ivo, you're right on somehow on a certain point, the industry is conservative. On the other side, if I reflect the last, I would say 3-4 years, not 5, 3-4 years, something like that, there's such a major change going on. And we are very much in discussions with all of the big shipyards regarding possibilities how to make conventional systems on the one side more efficient, but also to replace step by step as I mentioned, generated by another device. And also hybrid is a thing, because if we think about a second, the big mega yacht is entering into a harbor, and the propulsion engines are running on idle, and even there the gearbox has to slip somehow because the power is too much.
Yes.
And we do not need to talk about low load and SCR systems at this moment. I don't have to explain what this means, but their hybrid can help us as well. And these things are available for sure. They are not, let's say, available in the way that we say we have experience for the last 20 years. That's not the point. On the other side, it's technology which is there, technology which has been used in other applications as well, and we can easily transfer it to solutions on mega yachts.
Yeah. Jan Willem, what are the shipyards saying to you about the future?
As I said before, but I lost connection for some reason, so I lost part of the conversation. Comfort is high in the level, so I expect a move towards batteries, more batteries, hybrid solutions, so they can sail zero emission in harbors, but also be in a bay somewhere. And then, you need to rethink the whole design of the vessel, of course. So maybe you move away from complete conventional drivetrains, and you start with diesel electric because it's just a part of the whole power plant. So yes, there will be a change. Especially to comfort, and I think the interest for emissions and, let's say, having a lower footprint, environmental footprint, that's also coming up in the super yacht industry and gains momentum at this moment, and we need to shift on that as well.
Even the public is watching to this industry quite more, and also the, let's say, owners are looking in this direction more, and have an eye to make their hobby, let's say, a little bit more green. That's mind changing there, I guess.
Exactly.
I think there's a definite perception issue we have to tackle, but also one of the things that's come up in conversation before is the resistance to change from people like chief engineers and people on board the yachts who are not necessarily ready for the change because they're fairly old school in their mentality. Is that fair?
In my experience, yes.
Yes. Peter, your comment?
Yeah, it meets also our experience. So we made a lot of experience with our hybrid solutions. So in principle, even if you can make an economical case and show that the benefits for operators and so on, it is about introducing something new into the machine room, and the openness for this is, let me say, limited.
Yeah. I think the first revolution was already introducing electronics on an engine for them, and now we are doing one step forward, introducing more components, more electricity, more power management systems. So yes, that will be challenging, and maybe also a need for a different type of engineers on board.
Yeah, and again, I think we have to make it as easy as possible. For sure, this will be new technology, and everything which is new is somehow difficult in the first step. But we have many more possibilities in comparison to the past. Let's think about digital solutions, connecting to the boat, having remote services. All these kind of stuff can help us here to make that happen.
Do you think there will ever be a time when the engine manufacturer is such a partner that they provide a yacht with an engineer on board full time? A bit like, I'm thinking more like aviation, the relationship between the engine manufacturer and the plane. Do you think that will ever become part of our future in terms of maintenance, efficiency, supply, and operation?
I think we have very much parallels to the air industry, and somehow there are, let's say, ideas and solutions we can look for and also combine with mega yachts. But as the customers are the same in the end, it totally makes sense to go in this direction. And I see definitely possibilities to not copy, but further develop existing solutions from the air industry.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the way Rolls-Royce work with jet manufacturers is a very different scenario, but certainly has application and probably some operational benefit in terms of financial control to make sure the maintenance profile becomes a much more attractive proposition.
Absolutely.
I think, Martin, I'd just like to add that for the fuel cell industry, this is definitely one of the things that they are looking at, where when you look at a multi-meg or at a 3 or 5 megawatt installation, for instance, it comes in modular blocks, and those blocks, one of those blocks can be replaced while the other units remain active and providing power to the vessel. And these blocks can be rented on a power by hour basis, which is very much where the link to the aviation industry is coming from. And so actually, I think it is a good idea, because particularly with the hydrogen technology, this is very complicated technology that is different. So don't expect a chief engineer on an 80-meter yacht to understand how this all works. You need a dedicated hydrogen person who understands how the components and how the system works, and to make sure that the hydrogen comes on board safely. So having somebody from the company as part of the actual crew is actually not a bad idea. I do think that's a very good suggestion.
Yeah, Peter, please.
I don't fully agree with Ivo what you said here. So the technology itself, when the maturity and the field experience is there, is much simpler. If you look quite objective on it, from a redset engine and the fuel system to fuel cell and the hydrogen system, or at least it's not much more complex. But I agree. So with the different kind of business models, so renting the modules, renting or selling the power or the propulsion by kilometer, by power, and so on and so on. So there will be a significant change. And I think the modularity you mentioned is a key for that.
Yeah, well, it's mainly because also fuel cells tend to have a lifetime requirement. They vary between 25 to 30,000 hours essentially, and then the stack has to be taken apart and built back together again. And this is one of the reasons why the concept of modularity has really been introduced in these megawatt installations. And that is something that you can, for instance, Willem was saying about having more engines and having more modular units inside the engine room would allow for this flexibility. And I think one of the things that would be worth mentioning, Martin, is the concept of future proofing. Because obviously, if you're building a yacht now and you know that the scene of technology is changing within the next decade, what are we supposed to say to owners to now make this large investment into the yacht and then say, well, you need to go and change it all in 5 to 8 years? And that is, I think, is something that we as an industry should think about. It's because we get this question regularly, basically, and it stops them from committing to a new yacht, because they're like, well, I'll wait a little bit. I'll rent I'll charter a couple of yachts for a couple of seasons. I'm not going to buy that yacht now because I know that the technology is changing. And we get this a lot, actually, which is a shame, because it stops the introduction of the new technology, and it stops the introduction of these visionary owners that we always talk about.
Yeah. Tobias, do you think the market is, let's say, getting more open to this transition into the next generation of the propulsion power systems, etc.? Every conversation you have with a shipyard, is it getting easier to talk about hybrid and new generation systems, or is there still a barrier that you're wanting to overcome?
Yeah, so I would say over the last couple of years, this changes definitely significantly. So we have, I would say, not one single meeting with the shipyards where we not have a discussion, even if it's not a side discussion, regarding alternative technologies or things we can do to make the boat more green. So that's definitely happened. I think what still remains a challenge is to make it then to a project, to a real order. So at the moment, I have the feeling it's still a special thing. But again, reflecting all the discussions we have and also direction the situation is driving to, I'm absolutely confident that we will get more and more orders with hybrid installations, and with alternative solutions. Hydrogen is, I would say, also on every second meeting a topic. So the shipyards are open for that, definitely. And as I mentioned before, I think we as an industry have to deliver somehow the confidence that we can make it.
Yeah. One of the things that's come up in conversation with me with shipyards and other intermediaries is the cost of these new systems. What is the percentage difference on the capex? Roughly.
I think that's a close guarded secret, but it depends on the size of the boat. I must admit, there is a size issue. If the boat is big, 100 meters or whatever, the relative cost of the power plant is smaller compared to the overall figure. If the boat becomes smaller, say a 50 meter or a 35 meter, then all of a sudden the electricity budget goes through the roof. And that is obviously not something, that affects the overall balance, and that has an effect on price of the yacht, yes. So in the smaller boat sector, smaller, define small, but you know what I mean? In the 35 to 50 meter market, even 60 meter market, I think it has an effect. Higher up, 150, whatever, 120 to 150 meters, I think it's not the defining factor. Those boats are diesel electric already. So
yeah, sure.
So, but it's the 35 to 60 meter range, I think.
So any comment
in my experience with talking to shipping?
Any comment from the engine companies? Price variation? Any percentages or ballpark figures?
If you look at the standard package we have for a genset, and we need to adjust it now to IMO 3, it's a plus roughly 20,000 euro per genset. So relatively, that's quite a good package. And that's is from, let's say, 200 kilowatt up to 500 kilowatt electric, what we can supply. So, and another issue, which is, let's say, a kind of dark cloud in many aspects by the market, is that they think that the installations are very big and huge, consuming a lot of space. And then I would like to say to everybody listening to this call, check the market very well, because there are also very compact installations available, which can be installed in a corner of your engine room. So you can hardly find it, the after treatment system from a certain supplier sitting on the desk here.
Tobias, any comment
advertising into you?
Peter or Tobias, any comment on the price point or the value proposition?
Yeah, definitely. So what I have to mention here is that the most challenging thing is that we have to compare apples with apples. So a system, let's say a modern system, let's stay a second with a hybrid system, for example, it is not, let's say, the traditional gearbox engine combination and the generator with a traditional switchboard. It's just much more integrated. So we always talk about a complete integrated system where we have also control over the from the bridge, let's say, to the engine room, and take over also the power management system and some, let's say, Lego bricks in this game, which have not been part of the scope before. So from this perspective, it is somehow in the first step expensive. It seems to be expensive, but if you, in the end, if you calculate everything together, it is somehow affordable and attractive. And there again, this is something where we have really compared the right things and let's say comparable scopes.
I think this is the point. I think the market has to do much more homework, like Jan Willem was saying, to do their investigation thoroughly to get the right result. Because obviously there's two things. One is the understanding of what you're buying, but also the life cycle cost. And that becomes even more interesting, because I feel the market is starting to look at life cycle cost, but not in the way that shipping has done or aviation has done in a sophisticated calculation. To me, that's missing. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot more money can be saved over time if you apply the right system.
Absolutely.
I think, go ahead, Peter. No, go ahead, Peter.
Absolutely, and we had a little bit of discussion about new business models and so on, and when we're talking about hydrogen and fuel cells, about infrastructure, It's a little bit like Tobias and also Ivo already mentioned. It's about looking a little bit more holistic on the whole energy system of the yacht, and not comparing perhaps today's genset installation with a don't know what tomorrow's fuel cell generator installation. This would not work directly. On long term, most likely yes, but not directly. And so this is the process where we are as the whole industry in to guide and lead this process.
Ivo, any comment?
Well, no, I just wanted to mention that you mentioned the word life cycle cost, which I think is something also that when we advise clients from our side of the table, so to speak, it's probably not a topic that is mentioned a lot. You know, we tend to advise a client to build a certain yacht with a certain builder, to look at what do you want to do with the yacht, how many people do you want to take, what is your range, etc., etc. But we don't want to say, well, how much money do you want to spend over a 20-year period? Look at crew operational costs. Let's look at, you know, all those kind of things. And so then all of a sudden the operational efficiency of the yacht in performing its function, as in, you know, providing the owner with its pleasure, is certainly something that should be considered. So I think one of the things how we do this in the European projects that I'm involved with is we use this concept of digital twin, which essentially is a digital version of the boat. And I think probably, you know, MTU and Volvo Penta are very familiar with the concept, is that that way we can actually do a proper life cycle analysis of the yacht. And you can use data from previous yachts, and you look at, you know, how do charters operate and how much kilometers do they do and what is their consumption and power consumption on board, etc., etc. And you put all of that into a digital model, and then you actually calculate the life cycle cost and the emissions of the yacht, and, you know, all the things that you would normally do with a yacht. Yeah. And I think that is something that we certainly from the companies, generally talking to the yacht brokerage companies in the industry, can certainly introduce the whole concept of digital twins to advise clients better. Basically.
Yes. Yeah, I think it comes down to there's a factor here which comes into a lot of conversations is how much advice the end client gets and at what time in the conversation. Because I think if they knew more about what is available or what they could do to improve or optimize the vessel, they'd rather invest in that from a future thinking point of view. And it comes down to how, I'm going to ask a very simple question here. How often do members of the MTU team or the Volvo Penta team actually ever talk to the end user? Does that ever happen?
On boat shows sometimes, huh?
I'm intrigued as to whether they actually ever want to know or ever inquire about what is there a better solution, or is there always these barriers or gatekeepers that stop that information getting through to them?
I think some of the final operators or customers or clients, they are really interested and they are up to all minor detail involved. And other ones, they don't care at all. They would just want to have their vessel. So it depends really customer by customer. But I think the interest will grow because, and also from the crew, due to the IMO 3 and all the new installations, there should become more interest in this because we cannot bypass it. It will be there, and the new technology will come in, and also I think the market will look at super yachts as big spenders, and if it's not green, and maybe the cities will block them to get into the harbors, they can only sail in zero emission or whatever. So this new technology will come in. So the interest of the customer should grow, and also he should realize, or she, of course, should realize that the impact, also the how do you call it, social impact of his investment, and how they look at him is also becoming a big issue or a big point in the future, I think.
Yeah. Tobias?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think there's nothing to add. That's exactly the same answer I would have given. We have totally different owners. Some are very trusted, as you said. Some are, let's say, represented through the management companies then.
Yep.
But it's changing. As I said, the public is having a view, and yeah, I think we will have in future more direct discussions here, also regarding the life cycle cost issue and the green footprint overall.
Yeah. Peter, any final comment from your side? Again, I have one last question for all four of you. All right, and it's really just as a blue sky thought. If you look beyond the 10 years, beyond 2030, and you look in terms of today's industry, 5,000 plus yachts, and between now and 2030, another couple of thousand yachts potentially. What are the things that you feel we today should do to make sure the technology we apply, the people we employ becomes what I call the #1 priority or focus? Is there one thing that we should do as an industry to say, right, we have to do this, we have to change this, because otherwise it's going to mean that the future isn't going to be as healthy as we feel? Tobias, you go first, you're nodding.
Yeah, I would say that the most important thing we can do is not stop talking about this, having this discussion continuously, and also, let's say, have a look to the overall situation. So we mentioned already, it's not the own reality or not the own solution. It will be a mixture of different technologies, and we need to align ourselves continuously and have discussions like this to further drive that. And then I'm convinced that we have this decarbonization approach, as we say, quite soon in 2030 there.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, well,
yeah, I think the crew plays also quite an important role here, and to convince them that an installation fit for purpose and not just over-dimensioned is much better for them, also in lower maintenance and works. That would be, I think, also one of the keys. It's a world on its own, and they are quite conservative, I think. So the captains are most of the time advising the owners, so they play a very important role here. What I would suggest is, and I said it before, build up your power plant in a modular way, because only complying to IMO 3 is not future proof. It's future today. It's proof for today, but not for the future. And build it up in a modular way so you can easily change. So your investment in your super yacht is still valid in 10 years, and you can upgrade it again in a very simple way.
Yeah, agreed. Peter?
So I think, adding on what has been said from Jan Willem and Tobias already, that the sustainability of a solution will become more and more important. The customer, the user, the operator, the user of a yacht, the one who buys and orders the yacht, will have a more closer look on the CO2 footprint, all that stuff, perhaps not from his own heart, but the public discussion around and the look from the society on yacht users will force the industry and the users to go for sustainable solutions.
Yeah, agreed. And Ivo?
Oh, there's some very good things have been said already. I think I'd like to finish with the fact that we need to move to a sort of zero carbon solution in the future, and one of the things that implies is essentially moving away from our current fuels, that being the diesel, and with whatever topic we are going to replace that with, whatever fuel, could be hydrogen, ammonia, batteries. I mean, there's many different solutions. So I think the fuel supply infrastructure for these alternative fuels, and we talked about shore power, see that as a fuel really, is really the key, I think, because if there's no fuel, there is no yacht, essentially.
And yeah, absolutely agree, 100%. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your comments, your time, and your insight. I think the future, obviously, from my point of view, is driving this sustainability topic Jan Willem, you said this comment about engineers and crew, etc. I really feel there is a conservatism there because they're being trained to do diesel maintenance. And I feel there's going to be almost a vacuum in the system of people who know how to look after the next generation of technology. So that's another thing we have to tackle. I agree with all of you about the future client base wanting something that's far more acceptable. You look at the arrival of Tesla, you look at the arrival of everything else in the automotive and the talk about the new electric planes. The world is changing very fast, but I feel the yacht market is changing not as fast as we probably should. So I agree with you, Tobias. One of the things we will definitely do is make sure more of these conversations happen. And I'm really looking forward to more of them with shipyards on the call, with engineers on the call, and maybe with owners on the call, because I think that would be an interesting debate. So thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.